for helping us organize several events, and for all of you for attending this meeting. Today I would like to present my recent book, which is called The End of Israel, and to connect it to the reality on the ground and share with you a conversation about the future, and hopefully there will be enough time to hear your questions and comments as well. There is no doubt that most of our energies are invested and should be invested in stopping the genocide, and there's no doubt that the people of Gaza want the bombing to stop in whatever way possible. So when we hear about the last initiative, at least we hope that this will bring a longer ceasefire, that will bring some rest to the people of Gaza, and will lead to the exchange of prisoners. But we should not confuse this with ending the conflict, because what this plan is bringing was tried before and failed. Once again, the Palestinians are not asked what they want. Once again, the whole program is based on what Israel wants. And this was the aim and the essence of the so-called peace process before today. In other words, this new program is not ending what everybody understands is the worst chapter in the history of Palestine. It's very easy to be desperate, to fall into despair, understanding the alliance that begins with the United States through the governments of Europe and the Arab world. It's very easy when you look at this alliance to believe that it's impossible to imagine the end of this terrible chapter. But I decided to write a book that is hopeful about the future and does not say it's bad now and it will be even worse later. Not because I wanted just to be hopeful, but because I analyze the reality in a way that leads me to think that in the long term there is a better future. It begins by changing the main question everybody asks. Everybody asks, what will be the future of Gaza? I ask a different question. I say the question is, what is the future of Israel, not of Gaza? And I think that if you look deeper into the processes taking place inside Israel, you will agree that talking about the end of Israel is realistic. Whether you are afraid of the end of Israel or you hope for the end of Israel, I claim this is the conversation we should have. In order to understand why this is the most important question, we have to go back and ask ourselves, what is Israel and how was it established? Israel was established as a European solution for a European problem. The European problem was anti-Semitism, racism towards Jews, inability of Europe to accept the Jews as equal Europeans, and therefore they supported the idea to build a European Jewish state in the heart of the Arab world. And you can do it by force. And it was imposed on the Palestinians, imposed on the Arab world, and was also sustained by force. It also existed because it served interests, whether these are imperialist interests of the United States, economic interests of multinational cooperation, and a lot of people buying into the idea that this is the best insurance against another Holocaust. Also, after 80 years of existence, a state becomes organic. So there are 8 million people living, having their own culture, their own language. So one does not wipe out a state, and this is not the idea of the book. I'm talking much more about the change of regime, the change of the nature of the state that we need to talk about, because if the state is not going to change, then the conflict will continue. There is a one state today, Israel, that controls the whole of historical Palestine through a system of apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and recently genocide. A state that has an ideology that its only promise for existence in the future is by eliminating Palestine and the Palestinians. Some would like to do it in an indirect way, more sophisticated way. Right now we have a government that wants to do it in a very clear way without any inhibitions. So we need to talk about the future of such a state if we care about the Palestinians, but also if we care about the Jews between the river and the sea. The future of this state is also relevant to the future of the Arab world. It's also relevant to the future of Jewish communities around the world. And it's relevant to peace and justice all over the world. If you ask the Palestinians, they will tell you, we never wanted to be responsible for the future of the Arab world, for the future of the world. But the world forced the Palestinians to be the epicenter of the future, not only of their own homeland, but of the globe as a whole. The heart of the matter is the fact that this state is regarded by the West as part of the West, and therefore the immunity it receives from the West is the immunity the West has compared to the rest of the world. If we examine Israel according to international law, international justice, it's not a valid political project. That doesn't matter that you wipe out a state that is so problematic, but it means that if you want to discuss the future, you cannot avoid this problem. Because after all, the world needs international law. It needs an accepted international justice. Otherwise, as a human society, we will not be able to work together towards challenges that affect us all, like ecology, poverty, and immigration. So I do believe that a different kind of a state in the future between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean will not only bring an end to the suffering of the Palestinians, but will open new conditions for the region and the world to deal with these formidable challenges. And history teaches us that states can disappear, regimes can change, and that history is not linear but cyclic. So let me first explain why do I think we are at the beginning of the end of this particular project. Let's call it the Zionist project in Palestine. There are two major problems that the state is unable to solve and are so serious that it can bring it down. One problem is that Israel was based on the idea that Judaism is nationalism and not religion. It's not working. The Jewish people in Israel have almost a civil war about the question, what does it mean to be a Jew in national terms, not in religious terms. That's why we have today actually two states in the Jewish state of Israel. One state I call the old state of Israel, and the new state I call the state of Judea. The state of Judea was born in the Jewish settlements in the West Bank, but now has support all over Israel, and it wants to build Israel as a theocracy. Their enemies are not just the Palestinians, but also the secular Jews. They say that the secular Jews have played an important role in history, But that road ended, and if they want to continue to live in Israel, they cannot continue to live as secular people. They also are not content with having the whole of Palestine as the future kingdom of Israel. They also have territorial ambitions for Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. In the 1980s, these ideas were looked at Israel as lunatic, not serious, but now they are the most important ideological force in Israel. And they are controlling the army, the secret service, the media, the political system, and they are now trying to take over also the judicial system. The secular side, what I call the old state of Israel, is fighting back, but doesn't have any real alternative vision for the future. And the main reason is because they don't regard the Palestinians as partners for an alternative. You can see it in the process of elections in Israel. The only way for the very small left to go back to power is an alliance with the Palestinian citizens. But they will never have an alliance with the Palestinian citizens of Israel, although they are 20% of the population. But the main problem, of course, that they don't see the connection between the oppression of the Palestinians and the problem of defining what does it mean to be a Jewish state in the 21st century. So when we tried in Israel to join the demonstrations against Netanyahu by saying we are also against the genocide, they didn't want us to participate in these demonstrations. So they are against Netanyahu, but they are not against the genocide. But many of them have already left Israel because they have dual nationality, they have jobs that they can start over in a different place, and this is why I think the state of Judea is going to take over the state of Israel. And whoever supports the state of Israel today would find it very difficult to support the state of Judea in the future. So this is the first process that I think disintegrates the state of Israel from within. The second challenge is equally important, and this is the fact that you cannot succeed in eliminating the Palestinian people. Yes, Israel expelled half of the Palestinians in 1948, genocided 100,000 probably Palestinians in Gaza, and yet the Palestinian people are there resisting and not giving up. The Jews may be a small majority in historical Palestine, but they are a very small minority in the Arab world. And it's true, today the Arab world is not ready to unite and show real support for the Palestinians. That is the Arab governments, not the Arab people. Unfortunately, we have rulers and not leaders in many of the Arab countries. But this will change, because history shows us that when you have millions of people who are partly hungry, partly angry, partly wanting justice for themselves and for the Palestinians, one day they will change the policy from above. Rhodesia and former Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, and white South Africa believed that they can find a way of making Africa accept an apartheid supremacist state in the heart of the continent. You can impose for 100 years a European country on the Arab world, but you cannot impose it forever. To this you can add other challenges that make me think that we are nearing the end of this project. They include a very deep economic crisis. They include the fact that many young Jews in the world do not want to identify with Israel anymore, and it includes the international isolation of Israel. It also includes what will surprise people, but problems with the Israeli military that did not do as well as it claims to do in the last 2 years. The alliance that supports Israel usually does it not for moral reasons, but for strategic reasons. The question will be in the future, is the state of Judea a strategic asset or is it a strategic liability? So I think that we are seeing here a disintegration which begins very slow right now, but I know from history it can accelerate later on. A disintegration creates a vacuum. And if nobody fills the vacuum, the disintegration becomes a long story of violence and chaos. This is what happened in Syria when the Syrian state disintegrated. So we are looking at the Palestinian liberation movement to be ready to fill this vacuum. It's a very big challenge to a society that suffers from genocide and oppression, to ask them to strategize, to plan for the future. But not all the Palestinians are in Gaza, and not all the Palestinians are under occupation. There are millions of Palestinians who do have the time, the potential to look at the future and offer us a vision. It's a very young society, and if you listen to the young Palestinians, to what they say, to what they write, then you can see that they are beginning to build the alternative to the state of Judea that is unfolding in front of our eyes. This is a vision that does not ignore reality. For instance, it does not ignore the fact that there are 8 million Jews living between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean, or that these 8 million Jews develop their own culture and society. They just say that these Jews have a place in a democratic state, in a democratic Palestinian state, in a democratic decolonized Palestinian state. They are looking to live on the basis of equality, of human rights and justice. And in my book, I don't use the word justice as a slogan. I explain exactly what I learned from my conversation with young Palestinians, the meaning of justice for the future. Justice is not a small Bantustan in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Justice is not a solution that does not allow the Palestinian refugees and their descendants to return to Palestine. Justice does not include the continuation of institutions that are based on Jewish racism and supremacy. Justice is finding a way of compensating people who were expelled, of allowing people to return, and building a society that is based on equality. But justice for Palestine also means reintegrating Palestine into the Arab world. It's not in Europe. It's part of the Arab world, it's part of its problems, and it is part of its solution. In the second part of my book, I imagine such a Palestine in 2048. I will be very old in 1948. And somehow, contrary to what my doctors say, in the book, I am still moving around without any problem. And I'm going from Haifa, where I was born, to Beirut without a problem. I'm going to Damascus to give a lecture without a problem. And I'm discussing with my Palestinian friends and my Lebanese and Syrian friends how to build a total Eastern Mediterranean that reflects our history, heritage, and hopes for the future. I also describe as realistically as I can that we get to 2048 not in a very easy way. Decolonization is not a nice process. After 120 years of oppression, you don't wake up in the morning and suddenly everything is forgotten. But the journey in my book from 2025 to 2048 is the journey that is based on the most important impulse of the Palestinians. And that impulse is not revenge, but to live normal life, something the Palestinians were denied in the last 120 years. Normal life has a lot of problems, but there are problems that you can deal with once you are not under existential danger. And finally, we get to 2048, and we can only get to 2048 if not only Palestine changes, but also the politics in Europe change. There is no Meloni in 2048.
Non c'è Meloni nel 2048.
There is no cynical politics in 2048. There are politicians who are involved in politics not as a career, but because they really believe that they have to represent the problems of the people. I don't remember a period in my life when politicians were such low caliber, self-centered and interested how they look in television. But anyway, I will continue. It means that in order to get to a liberated, democratic Palestine, we also need to liberate ourselves from the kind of politics we have, the kind of problems we have today with populism and fascism, also in this country. This will liberate Palestine and the world. Thank you so much. So I hope I injected some optimism. I know that people are not happy to be optimistic now, but as an historian I can tell you that if you look into a longer distance future, there are many reasons to believe that we are at the beginning of the end of this very, very dark night and chapter.